Space, the final frontier. Join us for a bold conversation. Our prime directive: to recap our favorite Star Trek shows, both new and old. To engage in debate about all things Trek. Prepare to energize with phasers set to stun.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Phasers Set to Stun, where we continue to show our love for everything Star Trek in this ongoing series from a Film by Podcast, which focuses on every quadrant of the expanding universe of Trek by covering television, animation, movies, directors, merchandise, and so much more. Plotting the course, as always, is your core Trek crew. I'm David Burns.
I'm Scott Hoffman.
And I'm Wayne Whited.
In this episode, we are continuing our discussion of the brand new series, Starfleet Academy, with Episode 4, Vox and Excelso. And as usual, red alert listeners, if you're not caught up with the series, please go do so, as there are many spoilers ahead. We will be right here at the Academy, waiting. Well, gentlemen, we get a narrative-driven episode where we learn about a certain Klingon and his backstory. I do have to say we finally get a great episode for the Klingons in this new world of Trek. But before we get any farther, Scott, please tell us what it's about.
Sure. During the burn, the Klingons were forced from their homeworld of Kronos, and the surviving houses scattered throughout the quadrant. The Doctor refers to the Klingons as a diaspora, which is a large group of people from one ancestral homeland who are scattered but stay connected to their heritage while living elsewhere. This situation becomes more harrowing when a cargo ship carrying members of the last 8 Klingon houses suffers a critical failure and crashes. As a result, Chancellor Nala tries to find a way to help the Klingons survive by providing them with a new, stable homeworld, but the Klingons don't want to compromise their culture in the process. Among those houses in peril is Jaden's family, who were on board that ship and possibly dead. The topic of how to preserve Klingon culture while helping them survive becomes part of a debate class between Jaden and his classmates. This episode does a great job of focusing on the skills behind the best courtroom episodes in Star Trek and shows us a way forward for one of the most important species in the quadrant.
Very good. So, I'm curious here. I want your first reaction of this episode. Wayne, I'll let you go first.
Well, I think this episode is probably going to stand out as one of the strongest of the season, because we got exactly what I was hoping for with Starfleet Academy with this series. An honest-to-God, true Star Trek episode. That's how I felt. That actually goes into exploring, the state of the Federation and the galaxy of the 32nd century, as well as, develop that world even more. And that's what I was really hoping for. And in this case, it was the Klingons. I don't remember much about the Klingons in the last few seasons of Discovery. I don't think they were really talked about very much. So it's nice that we're learning more about what has happened to them over the 800 years. I really appreciate how Starfleet Academy is setting up their type of storytelling, about finding your voice. That's basically what the episode was about, without losing that classic Star Trek feel of that whole optimism that they've always carried throughout Star Trek. The characters here, they felt natural, they felt justified. Everything that they were doing, every movement they made, every speech, every comment they made felt very justified for this. The cadets, they were forced to step up, challenge the authority, decide what kind of officers they're really, they want to become. This episode may have just given us a slight glimpse into each one of these characters and where they're destined to go to in the years, that the series runs. I'm very curious, but I really, really like this episode. This is probably my favorite so far of the 4.
Interesting. Scott?
I feel like I appreciated it more at the end and on a second viewing. Originally, there were a lot of time, on the original viewing, I feel like there were some times when it felt a little slow and a little flat. And I think it was just the Jaden flashbacks. Um, Felt like it was taking a while to get through them. There's a lot of kind of slow parts to them. Um, I'm trying to get more of a grasp of what kind of character Jaden wants to be.
Hmm.
Um, in the Klingon culture, you have a Klingon who doesn't want to be a warrior, or I guess more specifically, he doesn't want to be the traditional kind of warrior, right? He has his own kind of path that he wants to follow. He has his own definition of who he wants to be, and he's trying to figure out who he is and who he wants to be as a Klingon, right? At the same time, he's trying to make an argument for letting the Klingons remain who they want to be. So I can see like the broader application, the broader meaning of it, but it did feel for me like in the first half, it felt like it was a little slow going. Um, I was just kind of caught off guard by the resolution to it, which I'm sure we'll get into kind of the battle that was put on.
Mhm.
It felt very ceremonial, or it felt maybe kind
It
of.
was.
It was.
I know, but
It was
like,
intended to be like that.
yeah, I don't know. There was part of me that was just kind of like, but would that satisfy what they want?
Hmm.
Like, would that feel like enough of a battle, enough of a conquest, um, to let them have that? It almost kind of felt like a battle that was offered to the Klingons, and I understand like the meaning behind it, but I don't know. Those were the things that just kind of caught me off guard by it. I think in a second watching, I was able to appreciate it a little bit more because I knew where it was going and how it would be reconciled. Um, yeah, first pass just kind of caught me off guard. Dave, what about you?
So, I'm the opposite of you, Wayne. I feel
Really?
this episode is the weakest so far of
Oh,
the
wow.
series. It's going to take a lot to beat the pilot for me. It's going to take a ton to beat the pilot because
Well, yeah, it was
that
that was a
felt
good episode.
that felt so theatrical. This felt very television to me, which I'm not putting that down by no means. This is a TV series. I get it, but I agree with Partial Scott this too because I felt like the first few scenes with the Klingons, the flashbacks, felt awkward, out of place. I don't know if it's the way they were filmed, the way they were shot, or the way they were performed, but something felt off. Something felt weird that just didn't set right with me. Eventually, by the time we got to the resolution, I was okay with it, and I was comfortable. I felt like I knew what they were going with the story, and then I liked the fact that Jaden stepped up to be that he was afraid of public speaking, but he realized what he needed to do because his people, his race, needed him to step up into that situation. So I get all of that, but as a whole episode, I don't know. Some of it just didn't work for me at all. And I love the fact that we got a powerful Klingon story, and I'm glad of that because we have been missing that for a very, very long time. And at times they've kind of beat the Klingon stories to death. The Next Generation did, and those kind of things. But we've missed that for a while, and now we've got that back, and I appreciate what they were doing. I loved David, is it Keeley, I think it is, who played Wolsick, Obel Wolsick. I love his relationship with Nala. I thought the scenes between the two of them felt very genuine, and but overall, I was not a big fan of this episode. So
Wow.
I feel like I could be on an island by myself here. But I kind of I agree with both of you on the ending stuff with the battle. I see why they did it, but at the same time, I felt like the Klingons from the Next Generation would have been like, "What the hell are you doing? We're not going to accept this as a battle to win this planet." Am I wrong in thinking of it that way? Because I don't feel like
Well,
I am.
the way I saw it is, we're talking about Klingons that are pretty close to the near extinction.
Mm-hmm.
They have been really, really beaten down. I think they all every ship in that battle knew what was going on. It wasn't like it was being hidden or not. It was obviously this was ceremonial, and it just something that they're going through the motions. But I think they all knew that they needed this planet. The Klingons wanted this planet, but they just their traditions, their honor, all that stuff, which they hold so dearly. They needed that. They needed that gesture
Mm-hmm.
to be able to justify taking the planet. I do understand. I understand what you're talking about. I understand what you're going for, but I'm actually rather surprised because some of your, especially Scott, some of your reasons that you said put you off of this episode a little bit are actually the reasons that I like this episode, and that is its slower pace. I thought it did a great job of blending that old school take your time Trek feel that with the more modern, Star Trek series, this fast paced stuff that we get. We got the debate, the ethics, the personal stake that I loved during the Next Generation's era. It reminded me a lot of the episodes like the Drumhead or the Measure of a Man. Or especially the Star Trek Voyager episode Author, which the Doctor even references in this episode. It's very similar in style and tone, but it's framed through the younger cadets, who they're just trying to figure themselves out. We're still very, very early on this, but that's why it makes that old Star Trek trope feel fresh. I was glued to the TV screen, and that's really odd because I've mentioned over and over again I don't like the Klingons. I have said that. It's very, very well known, but I like this. I found them rather interesting. I found this new. It's not exactly a new take, but a new era in there. Having to find out what happened to him after 800 years. It could lead to some very interesting storytelling in the future, not just for the Klingons, but for the character's name is I can't remember it now. It's off the top of my head, but I may have to change my opinion on the Klingons in this era. Really will.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn with it. I really am. I understand what you're talking about with the slower pace and stuff like that, but if you had 24 episodes in a season, okay, sure, take your time. But you don't have those long seasons anymore. You can't beat around the bush anymore. So I don't know. I get it. I like the character-driven episodes, and I guess it's a double-edged sword for me, I guess.
I understand.
There are some scenes in this episode that I absolutely loved. The one scene that I absolutely loved was the scene between Thok and Jaden.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was incredible. When she came out and basically, not as an instructor, more of an ambassador kind of thing. And I don't know if she used the ambassador term or not. I don't remember exactly what her phrasing was. But just speaking to him as almost like a friend and explaining to her where she came from. And in getting that, getting him to calm down. And by the end of that speech, that conversation, he had that get me back onto that debate, basically, because he realized what he needed to do, what he needed to say. And I really like that because we've had a lot of Nala and Caleb. It's nice to have Thok and somebody else. And I felt that was appropriate for this episode, that Thok was involved with him because obviously, she's part Klingon, right? And so they needed that connection, that relationship. So I appreciated that. So I thought that was the best scene in the entire episode, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that was a strong scene, and it's one that stuck with me. And I love Gina Yashir. Does a great job as Laura Thok in every episode. I think she steals the scenes, honestly. I think if anybody was going to counsel on helping to give kind of a perspective of where the Klingons are coming from, it would be her.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like what would have helped with the flashback scenes is if we had gotten more from them.
Yeah.
I feel like there are some times when the scenes are kind of almost kind of like fast forward edits. I'm not sure how to explain that, but the ones where they kind of like start in a scene and then they kind of fast forward and then jump to a person. I feel like it was trying to give action where it really needed a little bit more dialogue. Like I liked Jaden's relationship with his brother. I like the fact that his brother could see who he is and where he's going. I don't know, I guess there was just part of it that felt like it was missing there. I'm glad we got a little bit of backstory to it, but it took a while to hook me into it. I think where it was stronger was in the actual, on the ship, on the Academy, where he was trying to make his case for why the Klingons don't want to be handed a planet.
Yes, that was great. All of it. I agree.
And
I do agree with you, Scott, on the flashbacks. I really do agree. I mean, I took me a while to understand that they were what they even were, what was going on there, and they were a little awkward. I definitely understand where you're going there.
There's, I think what it is I didn't have that connection with his family at all. You got a tiny little bit with his brother, and to go back to say this is kind of funny because I'm complaining that it was too slow, but I felt like the scenes with the family was rushed. And they should have taken a little bit more time with them so we got to know his brother, we got to know his family, his dad. Because, yeah, when we find out what Thok was explaining to him about what his dad was doing, I get that, and that was powerful in itself. But I didn't have any feeling for any of his family at all. I had no emotional attachment whatsoever to any of them. The only time that I really get that emotional attachment to his brother is when he's basically calling Caleb his brother at the end of the episode, and the reason why he was doing it was because he felt like he didn't have enough room in his heart for Caleb because of his brother. I'm like, okay, that's neat and everything, but I just didn't have enough time with your family, so okay, whatever. Let's move on.
I feel like something that helped in a subsequent viewing is with that flashback, knowing a little bit more about what was going on with them after the burn.
Mm-hmm.
And having a difficult time probably keeping the culture intact because they're so spread out. I wasn't quite sure if they were on a planet with, I guess they were on a planet with other Klingons because there was the whole dust up that happened around Starfleet technology. It felt like at first they were stranded on the planet. So maybe having more interactions with other Klingons on that smaller planet, like even in the little town they were in, could have helped with that, maybe.
That I agree with you there. I wasn't really certain what was going on there at first. Just during the entire watching the episode, where they were they there on, were they exiled there? Were they trapped there? Are there other Klingons there? I was rather confused. I see what you're talking about there. It wasn't until I started doing back research into this episode that I understood, and that's it. Probably the big mistake that I find in this episode. You shouldn't have to do research in an episode to understand something.
No,
that's fair.
Not at all. You shouldn't. And I think that the detracts of it. I think that's why all of our complaint of wow, that stuff just felt awkward, because it did. It just felt out of place. But then all the present day stuff I thought was fantastic. The whole debating stuff. Remy, basically coming to Jaden's, rescue of getting him to understand how to meditate, how to put himself into a mindset, to prepare himself to debate when he gets nervous and those kind of things. I thought that was fantastic. And even then when he started to get nervous when he was out there debating, he looks at Remy, and Remy's telling him, to start to do that with his hands and stuff like that, to calm him down, to remind him, hey, don't rush yourself. Put yourself into that mindset. Get ready to debate here. And Caleb, I loved how all of a sudden, okay, he's not just this warrior. He's not just this, jock. The dude has knowledge and is smart. I like that because it shows a different level of that character that you really didn't see coming. So when he was putting out all of that stuff, it even surprised the doctors, like, holy crap. This guy knows his stuff. He's not doing it just by verbatim, even though he was getting, taunted by some of the people about that. He knew his stuff. He was studying. And it shows you that he is not only at the academy just because of to find his mother. He's actually starting to, I think he's going to be a captain one day, by the way it looks. I really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's also interesting, like the whole debate dynamic. And it's having the doctor at the head of that, I think was a good choice. It was an interesting choice. It gave him a role that maybe isn't necessarily expected. But him as a professor, him as a teacher, as a head of the debate, I think was a great choice. I don't know who else from the cast, like any other teacher that I would have had in that role, and I think that worked well.
Right.
No, Robert Picardo's awesome, no matter what.
Right,
he is. So. Speaking of Robert Picardo, did you guys notice? I just saw this today. He's got a pretty active social media account, and on Facebook he published today a video of the filming of the debate scenes. It was his birthday during the filming of that, and the whole cast were singing to him and praising him. It's a fantastic video on Facebook. Check it out. I mean, his account's great. It's loved. It's funny. It's great to follow.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
I did chuckle at the speech and debate is not for the chicken shit. I did chuckle at that. That was great.
Yeah.
It's like that again. Stuff you don't normally hear in Star Trek. I'm loving it.
No.
Especially from the doctor.
You know, that's really interesting that you know, we agree and we disagree about this episode. I think it's the first time that's ever really happened. You know, there was one episode where one person agreed and two of us strongly disagreed. Yeah. But this is the first time that I think we're all very conflicted with an episode of Star Trek since we started this podcast. I find that rather interesting.
One thing, and Wayne, I know you agree with me on this. Scott, you will too. One thing that I cheered about was Jerry Goldsmith's Klingon theme.
Yeah, that was yes.
Well yes.
That made me clap.
That was beautiful to hear. Yes, I was saying that too. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I mean, we may look back when the season's done a little bit differently about this episode. Maybe even one or two seasons down the road, we may look back at this episode differently when the Klingons start getting out there and making things happening again. But right now, not for me. I'm not saying it's horrible or terrible episode, but it's my least favorite of the season right now for sure. I know we still got some coming, but we'll go from there.
One thing I think this episode does prove is that they are going to do like they do with Strange New Worlds and do each character-centric episodes, because this was definitely Jaden's episode.
Agreed.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'm glad they're doing that. That's a great way to get to know these characters. All right. Well, let's move on, guys. Let's get to some of our favorite parts. Which characters shine the most? Wayne, I'll let you go first.
Well, I mean, obviously it's Jaden. And I do have to say, well, I wasn't certain about his character through the first 3 episodes. He put my doubts to rest in this one. The actor did such a phenomenal job with everything that he was given here. They're all great, but he got his chance to shine here. And he's become a character that and an actor that I'm curious about. I'm going to watch for in the future episodes. But I want to point out too that I also think Genesis really shines here as well. You know, the episode gives her a lot more space to move beyond that just that cadet that with something to prove. Lets her deal with the authority, the ethics, and a little bit of self-doubt. Watching her step into that debate rather than just avoid it feels like she's taken a really big step in her character growth, just like Jaden. Excuse me.
I know. I do the same
I'm having
thing.
trouble remembering his character for some reason. I can never remember his character's name.
Scott, what about you?
Yeah, I'll have to agree that this is Jaden's turn in the spotlight. I think he did a good job of overcoming what he needed to and kind of like facing his own kind of inner battle to arrive where they had to be. I think it'll be interesting to see where his character goes.
Yeah.
I think there's more of a chance for him to explore a little bit more about how his Klingon culture changed based on where it is and how it's forced to act. I hope that it obviously he's got a lot of room to kind of grow out of his shell because now he's very reserved and very much like, who am I? I don't think it was cleanly resolved by the end of the episode, but it'll be interesting to see kind of where he goes. Dave, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be across the board on this one. Jaden isn't just wrestling with expectations of being a warrior. He's carrying the deeper wound of believing he has dishonored his father. The loss of his brother weighs heavily on him, and the moment he admits he never realized he had room in his heart for Caleb, as well as was especially moving. His decision to finally let his brother go becomes a powerful turning point, revealing the kind of warrior he truly is. Jaden shows remarkable depth, sensitivity, and growth, layers we rarely get to see in a Klingon character. So I think that was fantastic. Another thing that I found interesting is, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but the actor who plays Jaden, he actually went to a speech place to learn how to speak in that deep voice that Jaden has. And it took him a little time to learn how to do that. And apparently Michael Dorn has been working side by side with him too, about being a Klingon and those kind of things. So, we got some Next Generation connection, which we know Frakes has directed in episode 2 coming up too. So definitely some Next Generation stuff here.
Because there was a picture posted with the two of them together recently, I saw. So I'm glad to hear that there's that connection, that they're really looking into doing their research.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if part of Michael's advice was don't let them mess with your teeth. Just don't.
Just don't. No. All right. So if you could be any character in this episode, who would it be and why? Scott, I'll let you go first.
Probably the Doctor. Because I'm sure that, he did a great job kind of moderating the debates, which we saw kind of samplings of. It would have been interesting to see, the different arguments that he would have been hearing, especially if there would have been moments where he was torn about which way to go. It feels like that would probably get, there's winning an argument, but also kind of top marks for having kind of an even pairing where it makes it difficult to resolve who would win. I think if I would change something about the Doctor's approach, I would probably put in either replace the quote that he pulled out or put in an additional quote. Because what he quotes about Admiral Sati, is that how you say that? The quote that he used seemed to be a different scenario than they were going for in this episode, versus maybe something from Ad Astra per Aspera could have been more appropriate in terms of Federation can't be about changing cultures. It has to be about accepting them. Otherwise, it changes the entire makeup. That's one thing. I was glad that they quoted back, but I was like, maybe just choose another quote. But anyway, I'd say the Doctor. Wayne, what about you?
Well, it was really hard for me to choose because I hate debating. I just hate it. I hated it in high school. I hated it in college, and I still hate it. So, like you, I chose the Doctor. Only because he's the one giving the lessons, and then he just gets to sit back and listen to the students and let them do the debating. Plus, he's teaching his students a very valuable lesson that we've seen used by every great officer in Starfleet from the past. That it's more important to balance your duty with your ethics than it is to just win an argument. So I chose him because he didn't have to debate. As simple as that.
So for me, I went the opposite way on you, Wayne, because I don't like public speaking. I don't like debating either. And I remember the first time I ever had to do it in college in front of a bunch of a big class, that fear. So I was able to, understand what Jaden was going through. I mean, not to the point where you lock up completely like he did, but, I felt like, I understood what he was going through. So I wouldn't mind being in his shoes at the time, because the biggest part was just getting past that fear of debating, that fear of public speaking. But it was just the mere fact of what he was able to accomplish by the time he got to the end of that episode. The fact he became a hero for his entire race. And not really realize was it that moment when he stepped onto the bridge, you could just sense and just see it in his eyes on just the amazement of being able to be at that moment on the bridge, but then getting to see Obel, I think is his name, Wolchuk, basically look at him in that way that somebody would look at like, oh my God, you are a hero. Look what you have done for your entire race, who was almost on the verge of being eliminated. To be in his shoes at that moment, that feeling he must have felt, the pride that he got there just had to be overwhelming. So I'll get past the public speaking part just to have that feeling. It was worth it.
That is a great scene. Yeah, that is a great scene of him when he steps on that bridge. Because you really think about it, it's the cadets at Starfleet Academy. Their big dream is to be on that bridge, and you see it in his face. That could be probably the first time he's ever stepped on it, and that was an amazing scene.
Absolutely, yeah, and to think where he's come from. He finally, his brother wanted him to join the academy. He finally got to join the academy. Probably putting that uniform on for the first time, but then getting to step on that bridge for the first time. My God, that had to be very overwhelming in itself.
Yeah, Yeah.
So good deal. Good picks, guys. Good picks. Well, let's move on to I know Wayne's favorite part, and of course that is the Easter egg section. Wayne, go to town, my friend.
There were quite a few of them in this episode, some really good ones, but you couldn't look for them. You had to listen for most of them. But let me start off with the what I kind of liked when they showed the a CBS studio production title card. It was very briefly displayed in Klingon before it reverted back into its English. Now, those of us from back in the 1980s will remember that after the release of Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, Pocket Books released a Klingon dictionary, which was written by a guy named Mark Okrand, who was the creator of the Klingon language used in that film and then the films that were after it. But most of the Next Generation and its sequels, they really didn't use this book as reference. Kind of the writers kind of just created their own words. They kind of used the sounds, but not the words. It seems to be that the Star Trek is starting to go back to that book because they were very strict in using it. In this one, you could definitely tell. You could hear if you listen to what they're saying. Look in the dictionary, you can translate it. I'm kind of glad that they're going back to that because it was a really well written language.
I remember that book, Wayne. I remember that book.
Remember that book? Yeah. It's a very dry book, hard to read.
It is, yeah.
Now, Scott, you brought this up a little bit, but the debate competition was named after Aaron Satie, who was one of the most famous judges in the Federation and was the father of Admiral Nora Satie, which is the character that was played by Gene Simmons in the Next Generation episode, The Drumhead. In that episode, Captain Picard states that his rulings were required reading at the Academy, and apparently 800 years later, they still are. The quote that the Doctor says is the exact same quote that Jean-Luc Picard recites. So what was it? With the first link, the chain is forged, the first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, first freedom denied, chains us all inevitably. That's exactly word per word right there. Also, on one of the screens, there is a Federation news report that states that the Navarre Council meets with the Hydrogen delegation ahead of the Delta Quadrant Summit. The Hydrogen were a race of hunters that caused a lot of problems for Captain Janeway and her crew in Star Trek Voyager's final seasons. So apparently the Delta Quadrant is now connected to the rest of it. They've actually can travel back and forth to it. Now, the Klingon colony that we were talking about earlier, that Jade and his family go to, that was named Krios Prime. And that's been a Klingon world for a very, very long time. It was the colony that the Klingons and the Romulans were arguing about in the Next Generation episode, The Mind's Eye. That was where it was discovered by LaForge and Ensign Rowe that the Romulans were secretly giving Federation weapons to the rebels there. Right. Caleb, bad name. Caleb mentions the Sigma Draconis star system. Now, that's where Captain Kirk and the Enterprise had to go and rescue Spock when he had his brain stolen in the original series episode, Spock's Brain. We learned a very valuable piece of political Klingon Federation history here, that the Organian Peace Treaty, established in the original series episode, Errand of Mercy, was superseded by the Khitomer Accords that they was shown in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. There's never been a direct link. This has never been mentioned between those two, and this is the first time. Also saw one of the ships that was sent to help the USS Athena was named the USS Riker. And then two things about the Klingons. First, we got to see the Klingon death ritual once again. That was first seen in the Next Generation episode, Heart of Glory, and many times after that. And I'm going to bring it up again because I loved it. Great big thank you to Jeff Russo for bringing back Jerry Goldsmith's Klingon theme.
Yep.
Yeah.
Couldn't. Yeah, that made the whole episode for me right there. Mm-hmm. How about Thok describing the free Jim Hadar, basically the post-series fate of that race after Deep Space Nine?
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, we always wondered what happened to him since the founders are the Dominion was dissolved.
Yeah, interesting. And I know the other ships too that were there was the Capricorn, Crimson, Lexington, and of course you mentioned the Riker. I thought that was interesting. They had to use Riker because Jonathan Frakes has directed an episode of this series, so come on, you better put Riker in there for crying out loud.
Throw him a bone.
Yeah, throw them a bone for crying out loud. All right, well, thanks, Wayne, for the education of the Easter eggs. That majority of those I've probably missed, but well done. Okay, so what are we seeing next week? I believe the episode's called Series Acclamation Mill. No idea what this is about. They really don't put out trailers.
We got a name this time.
We do, but they really don't.
No, but
put out
they
a lot.
did give us they did give us a little bit of a teaser about it, which is the first time they've ever actually published this. It says, Sam sets out to solve an ancient Starfleet mystery and embarks on a journey of self-discovery. I know they don't tell you very much, but it's definitely going to be a Sam-centric episode.
Sam. It'd be Sam and Genesis, probably, because those two are like thick as fleas. Well, then again, it might be Sam and the Doctor, because she loves the Doctor.
Could be.
Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, thanks, listeners, for listening to us talk about Starfleet Academy. What do you think about this episode? Do you agree with us? We're kind of torn, mixed up on this episode, but hey, it happens. We can't all agree all the time. It would be a boring world. Right, guys?
Yeah, for sure.
That would be right.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, guys, I thank you both for joining me, as always, here at the Academy. It's been fun talking about this series, and I can't wait to see where it's going.
Yep, likewise.
So you can check us out at www.filmbypodcast.com for film and TV articles and our entire library streaming free. You can write to us at filmbypodcast@gmail.com with your questions, comments, and concerns. We may just read your response in the show and send you a Film By swag. And if you haven't checked us out on YouTube yet, what is stopping you? Beam right over and hit that subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. And to all you listening to the show, following us on social media platforms, and subscribing to Patreon, we thank you. See you next time for another episode of Phasers Set to Stun. And remember, kids, speech and debate is not for the chicken shit.